Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and today we're going to talk about the projections that scare us. That's right. It's time to hide under the covers because there's some guys where the projections this year might not be as good as they are perceived. And of course, there's nobody better to help us figure out who those players might be than, of course, D-Bro, Derek Brown, the king of bros, the man who gets sunburned in the shade, and Pat Fitzmaurice, just fresh off a golf outing, who I believe his handicap is, what do you, like a 3 handicap right now, Fitzy? You're just
like a 33, Joe.
Oh, I forgot the other 3. I always forget the other 3 when it comes to you. But the boys are here, and we are locked in. Again, the projections you can find right now that we're basing this show off are there at fantasypros.com/projections. That's the place you can find all the ones we're going through today. And as we go through some of the big names here on this list that might scare the crap out of us in 2025, we want you to be with us for all of the 2025 season. So drop your comments below, subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. We're trying to get to 300,000 this year, and we could do it with your help. And in the meantime, if you do both of those things, you are getting a chance to win the George Pickens autographed Steelers jersey. That's right. He said, I don't need this Steelers jersey anymore. I'm on to Dallas. It's from pristineauction.com, and we're giving it away to a subscriber of the channel who comments on this or any video. Make sure you like the videos and ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications so you never miss a piece of content here on the channel. All right, gentlemen, let's get after it. Let's start with some of the names on our list that scare us in 2025 from a projection standpoint. D-Bro, let's start with a running back on your list. It's Chase Brown. Talk to me.
Dude, I was kind of surprised, and going through this, looking at just projections and talking about median outcomes, I was shocked that we in our projections have Chase Brown as RB17 right now. So if that comes to fruition, yes, we all need to be scared because we are drafting him in early best balls and ranking him as an RB1, and I understand why we're doing it. He was the RB4 in fantasy points per game last year, averaging almost 117 total yards when he was the starter. So for me, like, I've had a little bit of worries about Chase Brown because during that stretch, it was all volume. He was awesome. He was Cincinnati's CMC. The per touch efficiency is a little more concerning for me as a player who, for all the big play potential we saw in college, the speed, that wasn't there. I mean, this guy was outside the top 24 running backs in explosive run rate, missed tackles forced per attempt, and yards after contact per attempt. So I've had my worries about Chase Brown, although I've been pretty much in line with consensus on ranking. This RB17 projection scares the crap out of me, man. Like, if that's where he goes, he's going to be a big bust this coming year because people are expecting RB1 production if they are drafting Chase Brown.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a peculiar one, especially when you consider what's around that backfield. Zach Moss, Samaje Perine, I don't think those guys are really terrifying. Pat, since D-Bro brings it up, he makes a good point. You're looking at the ADP of Chase Brown at 12 RB overall. You got ECR at 14. So there's a lot of fallout potentially if he falls backwards. Do you think the projections are based off of how bad that defense is and how many negative game scripts they're in where they're going to have to throw the ball? Because, again, the defense of Cincinnati isn't very good, and it is a throw-first kind of offense with Joe Burrow and those receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the lack of volume that are holding down his projections a little bit. So last year from November on, Chase Brown averaged 18.9 carries, 4.8 catches a game. Now, I don't expect him to average 23.6 touches a game like he did over the second half of last season, but I do think Chase Brown is still pretty safely going to be the lead back in one of the best offenses in the league. And sure, someone is probably going to emerge as a tag team partner for Chase Brown, but like, who on this Bengals roster could threaten Chase Brown's primacy in this backfield? Like Taj Brooks, I like him, but he's not better than Chase Brown. Zach Moss, Samaje Perine, no. And our projections have Chase Brown at something like 15 or 16 touches a game. They have him at under 200 carries for the season. I think they're probably a little light there. So I've Chase Brown at RB11 in my rankings. I know we're probably not going to see huge weekly workloads for Chase Brown again this year. So I maybe agree with the projections on that. But I do think we'll get significant workloads and still the attractive weekly ceilings in a high-flying offense. And, you know, I'm not too worried about I know in college, kind of a different story there because he was run into the ground by Brett Bielema in his last college season at Illinois, like averaged over 20 carries a game. So he was running up against stacked boxes all the time. He is never going to run against a stacked box in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow at quarterback. It's just not going to happen. So I think we can kind of count on the efficiency staying high.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, look, I think all three of us like Chase Brown. I think we should all be a little concerned that the projections are a little on the lower side, but in those PPR leagues too, he was very consistent in the last about 8 games of the season, really seeing steady target volume too. So that's a plus in his game as well. And he seemed to handle the workload as he got deep into the season too. You had games where he had 25 carries, 18 carries, 20 carries to kind of finish out the year when they got hot, right? And that offense really didn't start clicking until the second half of the season anyway. It was too little too late for the Bengals, unfortunately. Fitzy, let's see if we can switch gears here and talk about a player whose projections right now scare you just a tad.
Yeah, let's talk about Drake Maye, who I am really into this year. And the reason I am is that we know rushing ability is a cheat code for quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But most of the QBs who provide substantial rushing value are really expensive in fantasy drafts, or will be once the 2025 draft season kicks off. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels. But you can turn a big profit if you can find a quarterback who provides prolific rushing value, but isn't very expensive. And I think Drake Maye can be that guy. Maye started 12 games as a rookie, but if we exclude week 18 when he only played 3 snaps before he was pulled, Maye averaged 4.9 carries and 38.3 rushing yards. Over a full season, that would project to 651 rushing yards. And I think Maye could actually do better than that. As a sophomore at North Carolina, he had 698 rushing yards. And remember that college quarterbacks have sack yardage deducted from their rushing yardage. So, yeah, Maye lost about 200 yards in sacks that year. So he was really closer to 850 rushing yards in only 14 games. Also, Drake Maye had 2 touchdown runs last season. In his 2 college seasons as a starter, 16 TD runs in 26 games. So the projections have Drake Maye QB 20 in fantasy scoring. That's the scary part. I have Maye at QB 9. So big alarming gap there. Although I certainly won't feel compelled to actually draft Maye as the QB 9 if I know I can get him somewhere in the teens. But it is a little scary that Maye comes in as a mid-range to low-end QB 2 in the projections. I don't even have a big beef with the passing projections for him, which are about 3,300 yards, 21 TD passes. But I do think the rushing projections for Maye are a little light. 538 yards, 2.6 TD runs. I'll pretty confidently bet the over on those numbers.
Now, I'm also high on Drake Maye this year, and those projections for me, again, doing all the quarterback write-ups in the Black Book and going through where I like him in Superflex, he's a tremendous value and target of mine this year in Superflex drafts because of that rushing equity. He's projected in our system right now for 536 rushing yards. That does feel light to me. Debro, are you or Fitzy and I are on this point in Drake Maye? Like, you can speculate where the touchdown totals are going to lie and where this offense might be. It can only be better than last year. I think we all know that. How much better? That's a big question. But we're talking about the baseline of fantasy points. The rushing equity matters a ton, and Drake Maye's playmaking ability was already on display, and those two things make him really intriguing to both of us. How about to you? Are you a little afraid of these projections being a little lower than maybe we are on Drake Maye this season?
I'm actually in line with these projections. Like right now, I've got Drake Maye as my QB 20. I think, and this isn't so much the hate on Maye. I like Maye. I really do. It just comes down to there's a lot of quarterbacks in that QB2 phylum that I like more than Drake Maye. And it's not just because honestly, his rushing projection is nice here. I mean, like 10th in attempts, 8th in rushing yards. Like I don't see Maye as a guy that I think he's going to go out and rush for like 700-800 yards. So sticking him in that mid-5 category, maybe the rushing touchdowns are light, but we don't know what New England's going to do at the goal line. It could be just Ramondre Stevenson season every single time they get inside the 5 or the 10. So I guess my worry, and it comes back to these projections for Drake Maye this year and why I'm lower than you guys are, is because of the passing. Like, if the volume isn't there, because I think we can all agree, New England Patriots, their defense is going to be much improved, if not really stinking good this year.
Yes.
And so
agreed.
Are we going to see Josh McDaniels airing the ball out? Are they going to play more conservative? Are they going to go run heavy? Is Mike Vrabel also going to have a say in what this offense looks like versus passing volume and rushing volume and how that all plays out in game script? Because, Joe, I mean, you've made the case on here before that the Patriots betting the over on their win totals. Okay, well, if that's the case, it's probably not related to what's fueling them winning games, which could be a lot of ugly games. That's probably not going to be related to their high-flying offense led by Ramondre Stevenson and Kyle Williams and Stephon Diggs.
Patriot football wasn't always pretty. I mean, it was the defense running the football and Tom Brady, being Tom Brady in the big moments for some of those tougher games. But
that goes back to it's probably not. They're not outscoring teams by a ton every single week.
No,
so
those wins are going to be
game
close.
Scripts going to look bad, and is that going to depress some of Drake May's numbers, especially in the passing department? So I don't have a problem with the projection. I think I can kind of quibble about okay, if I bump him up, 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns based off of where we have him, because I do think it's kind of light to give him only 2.6 rushing touchdowns. So
yeah, that seems light to me too. I think it's more like 4 or 5 easily.
So and the other thing I'll point out with when we're doing these projections, if you give him those 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns, like right now in our projections, he's got 263 fantasy points. If we were to give him even 2 more rushing touchdowns, you're talking about vaulting him up 5-6 spots. So he's at QB 14 if we give him 3 or more rushing touchdowns. So that's honestly, if we're going to quibble about the projection, I think it's the rushing touchdown total, and that could vault him up into that fringe, maybe just outside QB1 territory.
I think what's so interesting for me, Fitzy, just real quick, going back to you for a second, is when you look at the projections of the total points, Maye is behind. We're basically tied with Stafford and J.J. McCarthy. And I find that kind of odd because personally, as much as I really like McCarthy this year and the situation he's in, I just feel a little bit more confident that Maye is. I've seen enough of Maye where I am like, okay, he gets it. He's in there. I think he's ready to go. He's got a much better set of surroundings. You have him at 9, so clearly you would agree with that fact too. Like him and McCarthy are not close for you.
Yeah, Maye played capably in the worst possible circumstances. Bad offensive line, terrible pass catchers. And I still don't think we saw quite all of his rushing potential last year. And I know Debro just said he was okay with the projection on rushing yardage. I think if he makes 16 starts or 17, he is going to go for 700 rushing yards. And I feel pretty confident about that. He is an aggressive runner. If you watched him at North Carolina, he really seeks it out if he doesn't have an open receiver. So
it's one of the things I liked about him, and the consolation prize of not getting Jaden Daniels is hey, we're still getting a mobile quarterback who's got a good arm and he's got a little gunslinger mentality in him. All right, let's talk about another guy here on the list. Debro, you're a little afraid of Tyreek Hill, and I have to say I'm with you. I do not know what to do with this guy. Between the off the field issues, between the on-the-field situation where at this stage you got to imagine at 31 years old he starts to lose just a little of that speed. The injuries last year, an enormous drop-off year over year, too, just for him. Now, obviously, injuries had a big part to do with that, but when you go from being wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2, and then dropping off to wide receiver 23, that's a fantasy killer. So Tyreek Hill is a player that I think a lot of us are unsure what to do with. Some of us want to draft him just at a certain ADP, just to price enforce, just in case. What are the projections screaming out to you?
I mean, dude, they're right in line with his ADP and his ECR. Right now, he's wide receiver 14 in projections. He's wide receiver 15 in ADP and wide receiver 14 in ECR. That scares the crap out of me because I'm below consensus about that because that's what he didn't produce as this mid to high end wide receiver 2. With Tua last year, he was wide receiver 24. And he was outside the top in that stretch. So weeks 8 through 16 with Tua back, wide receiver 24. And outside the top 30 wide receivers of both target share and yards per route run, this projection scares me because I feel like the entire consensus is Tyreek Hill is going to keep humming along. And it's we didn't see that last year. What's to make you think that this happens this year? Even if everything magically works out perfectly. I fail to find the ceiling in where he beats this projection or even meets it based off of how the Dolphins look this year. Their offensive line isn't any better. The questions around Tua and the injury concern, getting the ball out quick, and that nuking Tyreek Hill, which we saw last year. What out of any of that we think is going to change or improve in 2025? So this projection and where we are, where the consensus is on Tyreek Hill scares the bejesus out of me because I can't see him paying off on this.
Well, Fitz, that's the thing, though. I mean, it is wide receiver 15 right now, right, in the ADP. The ECR is right around there, wide receiver 16. So you're getting a player who, at his best, is 1, 2, or 3, right? That's a league winner kind of thing. I think that's hard to shake people, especially when it's a name player like Tyreek Hill that they're so comfortable with drafting year over year and being elite and being great. He's coming off a year where he wasn't. There's enough of a discount here. Do the projections tell you that there's enough of a discount to get you excited about drafting him? Or are you scared because of what you saw last season and maybe what you didn't see this offseason out of the Dolphins to make it better?
Yeah, it's a discount for sure. We're certainly not paying the price we were paying for the guy who went for 1,700 yards 2 straight years. But, yeah, I'm kind of with Debro here. Like, we'll probably get some sort of bounce back from Tyreek if he stays healthy for most of the season. But, like, I'm just not sure we're getting the 88 catch, 1,100 yard season the projections are forecasting. I think maybe the brightest ray of hope for Tyreek Hill is that Tua he averaged a career low 5.7 intended air yards per attempt last year. Tua did. And in 2023 was at 7.7 intended air yards per attempt, a full 2 yards more per attempt than last season. In 2022, he was at 9.5. So if Tua stays healthy and Mike McDaniel doesn't need to install a Tua Tagovailoa preservation plan, maybe Tyreek goes back to being the cheetah. But if we're seeing more of what we saw last year with everything being a dump off to Achane or a short little pass to Jonnu Smith, and the receivers are in dry dock like they were last year, then, yeah, he's not going to hit these projections.
But don't you think that was out of necessity because the offensive line was so bad last year, you had to get rid of the football? And I just don't know if they've made enough improvements this year that changes its stripes, Steve, right?
That's it. Like, still one of the worst offensive lines in the league.
See that, and I think
that's exactly where I'm at.
And I think we come back to that fact when you're talking about Tyreek Hill. It's like, okay, you can say, okay, he's healthy now, everything's good. You could look at on the bright side of all these things, but the one just fact staring in the face is that offensive line did not improve nearly enough. And we find ourselves in that same scenario as we did in 2024. I think we're looking more like the guy we got in Tyreek in 2024 than the guy we got in 2023. Good conversations here. I want to keep the conversations going, but for a second, I just want to remind everybody the NBA Finals are here. They're going on right now, and this is your last shot to win some real cash before the season is over. And the simplest way to get in on that action, well, it's downloading the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. No gimmicks, no weird rules, just ball. So don't miss your last shot to win some cash this NBA season. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now. Use that promo code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros. New customers play $5. You get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Ride the upside only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. All right, let's get to another guy on our list here for the projections that scare us. Pat Fitzmaurice, you've got a fella named Kyren Williams on your list. What are you scared about when it comes to Kyren Williams? What more does this man have to do for you?
Yeah, I know, Joe. The projections just make me uneasy. Kyren has finished RB2 and RB8 in half-point PPR fantasy points per game the last 2 seasons. Last year, he had 316 carries in 16 games. The only running backs with more carries than Kyren Williams in 2024 were Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. Now Kyren is being projected for 278 carries this season, fewer than last year, but still a pretty hefty total, 5th most of any running back in the projections. Now, in terms of efficiency, Kyren was solid last year, not great, 4.1 yards per carry after being at 5.0 the year before. He was around 2.7 or 2.8 yards after contact per carry. Decent number, but I don't know. It hasn't always been easy to peg Sean McVay's backfields. Like, ask someone who invested in Cam Akers like I did a few years ago and got badly burned by it. And now the Rams keep adding to their backfield. They drafted Blake Corum in the 3rd round last year. They drafted Jarquez Hunter in the 4th round this year. I just worry that Kyren might not be a locked-in workhorse, but the projections are very confident that he's going to be exactly that.
Well, when it was Todd Gurley, it was pretty easy to remember where the ball was going. for at least 2 years. It was pretty easy. I think we have a blind spot, D-Bro, as the fantasy football community sometimes. When a player emerges out of thin air almost, where people just never believe, and then he does it, and then they don't want to buy in a second time, and he does it again, that they sometimes have a hard time coming around and finding their soul of saying, well, maybe I was just off, maybe I missed this. And I feel like the fantasy community at large kind of missed Kyren Williams coming, and that's fair. There were a lot of reasons to fade him, but after these 2 years, I keep struggling with why we're fading him. I know why Fitz is. He makes good arguments. Are you making those same arguments when it comes to Kyren Williams at his ADP or at his projection?
I am, yeah, and I will be very clear about this. I was not fading Kyren last year. I was not worried about Blake Corum. I was much lower than consensus on Blake Corum as a prospect, as a player. There was a ton of red flags on Blake Corum's prospect profile. When you want to talk about his all-22 and what he showed on tape, his ability, his explosiveness, and how much of that was robbed because of all the injuries. If you watch 2022 versus 2024, also discussing a player that every single year in college, his tackle breaking metrics and efficiency dropped. Those are not all signals of a talented player that we need to really be worried about. So I was in on Kyren last year, but I am out this year. And a lot of this comes down to, I think we're staring at the same thing that I was discussing last year with Rachaad White as an inefficient volume runner. And if there's not a talented enough running back in that room to take away the volume, then the inefficient volume hog continues on volume hogging, and then we're good to go. But when a talented runner and an explosive runner enters the room in Jarquez Hunter this year, I think there are concerns for Kyren Williams. Now, again, we talked about, I think that people are putting a lot of respect on Kyren's name in ranking him as an RB1 where they're at. There's not a lot of people that have him below that. The projections are doing the same, and all this scares the ever-living crap out of me because I'm just like, dude, like, I don't want people drafting him because all of this is volume stranglehold based. It's not because of the efficiency. And if that volume stranglehold goes away or gets diminished, then Kyren is not going to be an RB1. He's going to be an RB2 because even the narrative is wrong on Kyren. And we've had the narrative wrong, like whether we could talk about, okay, he's handled a lot more volume for his size than anybody ever expected coming into the NFL. All of the narratives about him being this illustrious pass catcher and the pass catching upside, none of that has come to fruition. He's been one of the most inefficient guys in the passing game. He doesn't get a lot of receptions. Like, even we're projecting him for 35 receptions. I have no problems with that. But if he loses time, that can also go down. Stafford's not checking it down. Kyren's not checking passes. So if he doesn't continue this absolute stranglehold on the volume and this backfield, people are drafting him as an RB1. He easily could be an RB2 in this offense if either Corum or I think Jarquez Hunter is going to make a dent in that volume.
I feel personally attacked by the Rachaad White comment because I had so many shares of him last year. And I was fighting
you and Erickson the entire time last year.
And I didn't see Bucky Irving coming. Like, I just did not. I didn't, or at least not that quickly. So There you go. All you can do. All right, one more name on both the lists here. D-Bro, let's go back to you for a moment here. Xavier Worthy next on your list. This is another one, too, where I think a lot of us are kind of looking at that and saying, all right, what we saw at the end of last year is fine. It was encouraging. But we don't know what it looks like when Rashee Rice is back. And I think that's where I struggle. So that being said, how do you look at these projections and tell us why Xavier Worthy might scare you and some others off in 2025?
I mean, we are projecting, not only do we have Xavier Worthy right now in PPR projections as the wide receiver 20, we have Rashee Rice above him. He is the 19, 18, 17. He's the wide receiver 16. So we're expecting.
I'm just grateful that he was not more than 20 because
yeah, exactly.
After that,
I was like, he's close. I can get it alive.
Derek's already got the gloves off. He's got the shoes off. God only help us. Thank God he was under 20.
I'm just happy it was inside of 20. Okay? Outside of that, once you get past 20, I don't even know what to do. But with Xavier Worthy, yeah, man, like we're projecting that Patrick Mahomes is going to support 2 top 20 wide receivers, and Travis Kelce obviously is a tight end 1 this year. And I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes can't do that theoretically, but the version of Patrick Mahomes that we've seen over the last 2 years has been absolutely god-awful, throwing deep down the field. And that's what I think Xavier Worthy's role is going to be in this offense. So can Mahomes improve as a deep passer? Sure, we've seen him be awesome in that. But over the last 2 years, is that more of who he is going forward, being bottom 10 in every single accuracy metric, 20 yards or further down the field? If that's who he is, then Xavier Worthy is going to fall on his face. He's not going to produce at this level that projections have him at, because he didn't even do that last year in that same role. And I know we highlighted this in our conversation with Matt Harmon, but I'm going to mention this here again. Xavier Worthy at the back half of last year was producing in the Rashee Rice role. Like, his ADOT dropped from 12.1 to 6.3. His design target rate doubled. His fantasy points, because I hate to tell people, but in weeks 1 through 12, when you were all so frustrated with Xavier Worthy, he was the wide receiver 51 in fantasy points per game as the field stretching element in this offense. If he goes back into that role and Mahomes is still one of the worst deep ball passers in the NFL, he's not going to come close to paying off this projection. Not even close. Nowhere.
We had a really good breakdown with Matt Harmon. If you missed it, the perception fellow himself was on earlier this week. Debro and I sat down with him. We went over some great wide receiver stuff. Go watch on the YouTube channel. That's an important show you need to watch if we're playing fantasy this year. Fitzy, real quick, your take on Xavier Worthy and his projections.
I mean, it's possible he could hit these receiving projections: 69 catches, 876 yards, 8 touchdowns. I do have some of the same reservations Debro has. But then you consider, like, the rushing projections for Worthy are pretty aggressive. 118 yards and 2.7 touchdowns. Like, I'm not counting on 2 or 3 touchdown runs for Xavier Worthy. So if we're building in some of his value based on that, it's kind of a rickety platform to build value on.
I was going to bring up the same thing, Fitzy. Like, that rushing projection is just a tad bit spicy.
It is.
It is. All right, Fitzy, I mentioned earlier my, getting run over by Rachaad White last year via Bucky Irving. And he's on your list this year. So is karma coming back around?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't think he is going to, Bucky Irving's not going to lose his job back to Rachaad White. Like, Rachaad White lost that job. Bucky took over as the lead back in Tampa down the stretch. And, yeah, Rachaad was in a pure backup role. I don't think there's any chance the pendulum swings back toward Rachaad White, barring injury. But I don't know. I have Bucky ranked RB7 in half-point PPR. The projections have him at RB11. What scares me is that I don't really have much of a beef with the projections. Like, they have Bucky with 234 carries, a little over 1,100 rushing yards, 8 TD runs, 43.5 receptions for 349 yards, and 1.8 touchdown catches. That's all pretty reasonable for Bucky's workload. And those rushing numbers actually give Bucky credit for being an efficient runner. They have him projected for 4.86 yards per carry. Yeah, he was at 5.4 last year, but that's going to be really hard to sustain. I was blown away by how good Bucky was last year. And I guess the reason, I'm scared by projections that I find reasonable that have him less valuable than I think he is. And, I thought he was a pretty solid option in the latter part of the second round of 2025 drafts. I know a lot of people think he's more of a third or fourth rounder, and the projections seem to agree with the people in the third round, fourth round camp.
Well, you've heard all the scary stories now about Chase Brown, Tyreek Hill, Xavier Worthy, Drake Maye, Kyren Williams, and Bucky Irving, but we like to hear from you. All those guys, somebody else, who scares you in 2025? Drop your comments below on the YouTube channel. You might win yourself a George Pickens autographed jersey just for commenting and interacting. So there's a lot of players you could be scared about. Also, don't miss our players to be excited about, because we're not going to live in fear. We're just not going to do that here on the channel. Subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Drop your comments below again. And, of course, we'll see you soon. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Debro and Pat Fitzmaurice, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.